Hello, welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to show you how to build this dice roll app. And this app is meant to be the second step after going through the lessons in the Start Here section of my site codewithchris.com. After you go through these lessons, this dice roll app project would be the perfect reinforcement for the concepts taught there. There's also a text version of this dice app tutorial which I am finishing up. You're going to be able to find the link to this tutorial in the description below the video if you're watching this on YouTube. Furthermore, I'd just like to say that this dice roll app was the very first tutorial I published on codewithchris.com and also on my YouTube channel. If you actually go back in my YouTube channel history, you're going to see some of the very first videos and it pertains to this dice roll app. Now what I've done, I'm going through a process of just refreshing all my tutorials on my site, just bringing back to life some of those app projects that we did because Swift and Xcode changes so fast. So this is the updated version of the dice roll app. Now this dice roll app tutorial is targeted at the beginner, so I'm going to handhold you and I'm going to go through the different parts of Xcode and point things out and go deliberately at a slow pace. If you've followed any of my other app tutorials before on my YouTube channel or site, or even enrolled in some of my courses before, you'll find this probably too slow for you, but again, it's targeted at the beginner. So if you've completed the War app before in the Start Here section or on the YouTube channel, then this app is going to be a good reinforcement of those concepts. Okay, so with that said, let's get started. Let's start a brand new project, create a new Xcode project, and make sure that the tab up here says iOS, and we're going to start with a single view application, which is going to be our basic type of application. I'm going to call this the dice roll app, and let's just call it dice roll tutorial because I've created this several times and I don't want to conflict any name. Here under team, you'll probably have none unless you sign up for an account, in which case you can put your name. Here I've got either your company name or personal name, and the organization identifier is usually in this sort of format where you go com dot and then your name or your company name, and it's automatically going to append the project or product name to the end of that. And this forms a sort of unique identifier for your application. Not so important for us just creating these tutorials and demo apps, but if you were to release some apps into the App Store and you're planning to release more, you probably want to have some sort of naming convention. Now under language, choose Swift instead of Objective-C. We want to use Swift. Devices, leave it as iPhone and have all of these guys unchecked. Click Next. I'm just going to save this on my desktop. And under source control, I have that unchecked. We're not going to work with that right now. Now this is going to create a brand new project for you. The first thing I want to do is jump into the storyboard. This left hand side is called your file navigator. Here you're going to find all the files for your Xcode project. This storyboard is actually a visual way for you to design your user interface. So it comprises of this view right here. This is called the document outline, and if you actually expand these nodes, you can see all of the elements in your view. If you don't have this little pane, this document outline, there's an icon down here that you can click to hide or show that document outline pane. So you're going to want to have that showing. On the right hand side, this column here is called the inspector pane, and it's kind of split into two sections. You have this top section which basically shows you any sort of configurable properties of whatever you have selected. So right here I have this view selected. It's going to show me some things that I can change for that view. Take note that there are a couple of tabs here as well. In this bottom half here, it also contains a couple of different tabs. The one that you will commonly use is this one right here called the object library. So make sure you have this selected. You may see these elements like this as these little squares. You can click this button here to change it into this view, which is helpful for beginners because you can read exactly what those things are. So we're going to get right into it by dragging some of the user interface elements from this object library onto the view here. And there's a filter text box down here where you can type and kind of filter out to the element you want. We're going to type in label here because that's what we want to add. And this is going to be a label that basically just displays text. So I just dragged it and I moved it on here. And take note that when you add it on here, there's all these little handles around the label, and you can drag one of these handles and you can actually resize it or you can position it. But the important thing I want to let you know about is that when you size things like this and you move this label around, that's not actually how it's going to show up in your app. The system that determines the position and the size of these elements is called auto layout, and it works by following a bunch of rules that dictate the size of things and how far away elements should be from the edge or from each other. And it's all based around these auto layout rules, or otherwise known as auto layout constraints, which we will be working with soon. But first, I just wanted to let you know about that. So what I want you to do now is tap on the label here. You're going to have it selected, or you can tap on it from here in the document outline too. That's going to change what you see here in the inspector pane. You're going to see all of these configurable properties for the label. For the text, I want you to change it to the sum is : and just press enter. You're going to see the text change here. Again, don't worry if your text is cut off like that or something like that, because you can expand the label a little bit like this by dragging these handles, but that's really not going to change the size of the label. But for visual purposes, while you're designing it, that's fine. The next thing we're going to want to do is to add some image views into this view. Image views are something that we can use to display images. So down here in the filter, type in image view and click and drag this guy here. You're going to have an image view like that. I'm going to size it just so that I have some more space to put a second one. Remember, dragging it like this, moving it, sizing it like this doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because it's the auto layout rules that are going to dictate how big they are. I'm going to drag another one there. I'm just going to size it like that. More or less the same, doesn't really matter. And lastly, I'm going to search for a button. This is going to be a button that the user can tap to do something with. So let's put that there. Okay, now what you're going to want to do is to put these two image views into what's called a stack view. And a stack view will help you organize and arrange your layout. An easy way we can put these two elements into a stack view is if we just go into the document outline here. If you hold down Command on your keyboard and you click the two image views, you're going to see them both highlighted in blue like that. So that's what you want. You're going to see both of them are highlighted. Then you want to go down here into this button, embed in stack, and when you click on that button, it's going to put both of those elements into a horizontal stack view. You can see here in the document outline that your two image views are gone. Instead, it's replaced by the stack view. But if you open it up, you're going to see your two image views inside that stack view. So this stack view is kind of like a container view that can contain other elements, and it just helps you arrange those elements that are inside of it. In this case, it just stacks elements horizontally beside each other. Now, if for some reason Xcode wasn't smart enough to put it side by side, and instead it's put it kind of on top of each other, you can click on the stack view here. In the inspector pane, just change the axis from vertical to horizontal. So for mine, it's already horizontal. We're going to also want to change the spacing property. I'm going to put 40 here, and that just dictates how much space is between each element. So you can see now I have a little space between the two elements. Now that we have this, we're going to put all three of these elements, the label, the stack view containing the two image views, and the button, highlight all of them by holding Command and clicking each one. Make sure that all of them are blue like this. And then I'm going to click that embed and stack again. This time it's smart enough to put them vertically. Again, if yours is not vertical, you can go here and change the axis to vertical. In the document outline, you can see all of my elements are now inside this kind of top level vertical stack view. Again, I'm going to change the spacing of this guy to just some number 50. It doesn't really matter at this point. And you're going to notice this little red arrow up here. When you click it, it's telling you that it's missing a bunch of constraints, and These are the auto layout rules I was talking about, because Xcode is trying to determine how to lay out your elements, but it doesn't have enough information. We have to give it a couple of additional rules to dictate how to lay things out. Because we're using stack views, it makes things a little bit easier. For instance, this stack view contains the two image views, and it knows to put them side by side because it's a horizontal stack view. And then this stack view has these three elements inside of it, and it knows that it needs to stack them vertically on top of each other with the spacing of 50 in between each. However, it doesn't know how to place this big stack view, this outer guy right here, doesn't know how to place that relative to the screen edges. So that's what we have to specify. We have to give it some rules, auto layout constraints, to tell Xcode how to position this outer stack view. So let's go ahead and add our first constraints. Click this stack view here, make sure it's highlighted. You can see this, you can see the handles here and this blue line around it. Then I want you to click on this Add New Constraints button. When you click on this, it's going to pop up this little menu here. If you don't see any of these numbers in here, a lot of these options are grayed out for you, make sure that you do have the stack view selected first. Okay, and then if you go back and click this button, you should see it pre-populated with some numbers. Basically, these numbers represent how it's positioned right now. First thing we're going to want to do is uncheck constraint to margins, and that's going to let us specify that the edges of the stack view should be all the way to the edge of the actual view and not to the margin. If we leave this checked on, and even if we specified, let's say 0 for this left edge, it's going to specify a rule where the stack view is 0 points to the margin and not to the edge of the screen. So if you want it to the edge of the screen, just uncheck constraint to margins, put 0 in there, press tab on the keyboard, 0 in there. You can see as I'm entering these numbers, I'm enabling these margins here. See, these two margins that I've specified on the left and right, they are enabled, so they're bright red. These two on the top and bottom are dimmed out. You can even click them to enable them like that, but as soon as you enter a number in there, they're going to be enabled anyways. So I'm going to put 0 in there and 0 in there. So I just want to point out that this drop down, you can also specify that the margin is relative to some sort of neighbor, or in this case, to the actual view. So if I put 0 and if I click this drop down, I can see that it's going to be 0 relative to the view, which is this whole entire view here. If I do it for this top guy, however, you can see I have two options. Right now it's selected that it's going to be 0 to the top layout guide. Now the top layout guide is sort of this invisible line here that basically separates the space for the battery and the carrier and the time that goes up here, this little status bar. So I'm going to leave it relative to this top layout guide. So my stack view isn't going to reach all the way to the top. It's going to be 0 from the top layout guide. Okay, so 4 constraints, go down here, add 4 constraints like that, and you can instantly see your stack view change. Like I said, see, it doesn't go all the way to the top because it's 0 from the top layout guide, which is this line here. So on the other ones, you can see that it's all zeros to the edges. And also in the document outline, you'll notice that now you have these 4 constraints. These are the constraints that you added. If you accidentally entered in a number other than 0 and you want to change it, you can simply highlight the appropriate constraint, go on the inspector pane and change that constant to 0 or another number if you'd like. Or you can even go ahead and highlight all of these and hit delete, and that will delete all 4 of the constraints. And once again, you're going to have to add the constraints if you made a mistake and you want to do it again. So let me just quickly do it again because I just deleted them. Okay, and if your stack view isn't looking like this, maybe it's like mispositioned like that and you get these orange lines, the orange lines are basically telling you that what you're seeing here on the screen, it's not reflective of the rules that you've added. So it's telling you that what you're seeing here doesn't really conform to the rules that you've specified. So all you need to do is click this little button here to update frames, and that's going to basically take a look at all your constraints and lay everything out according to them, kind of refreshing the screen, if you will. So click that, everything appears like this again. Now, one more thing I want to quickly mention is in this stack view, you see how there's this much space from the top all the way to the bottom, and you can see how the button is sort of in the middle here. In fact, if you click the button, you'll see the handles for the button here and here. And then you'll see the little gap which we specified. The stack view has, that gap between each of the elements. And then we have the horizontal stack view, and then another gap, and then the label. So how is it that Xcode chose to stretch out this button to fill out the remaining space? Well, if you click on the button and you go here to this size inspector, you scroll down and you can see this thing called the content hugging priority. And this little setting is used when there's extra space. So in this case, for these three elements, the label, this horizontal stack view, and the button, there is a lot of extra space. Which element gets stretched and which element kind of maintains its size? Well, that's what is dictated by this content hugging priority. So the higher the priority, the more the content will be hugged. By default, it may be that all three of these elements have the same content hugging priority. In that case, I think it just randomly chooses it. So let's check here. The label has a content hugging priority on the vertical axis for 251. The horizontal stack view has 250, and the button has 250 as well. So the button and the stack view have the same vertical content hugging priority, but I think it just randomly chose the button, or it may be that it's the last element in the stack view. So for instance, if I change the content hugging priority for the label, instead of 251, I'm going to give it a low priority. I'm going to give it the lowest priority, so 249. And because it has the lowest priority, it's the one that's going to get stretched out. You can see that, that's changed there. So if you want the button to be the one that's stretched out, you need to make sure that its content hugging priority is the lowest. So the label I'm going to leave at 251. Stack view, let's also leave it at, up it to 251. So the button for sure will get stretched because it only has a vertical content hugging priority of 250, which is the lowest out of those three. Okay, so that's how, that's why that button is stretched out. On to the next step now. We're going to expose these elements so that we can write code to access and reference these elements which we've added to the storyboard, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to change any of these things. And we're going to do that by connecting these elements to IB outlet properties. So there are lots of different ways to do this, and it's actually one of the most common stumbling blocks for beginners. So I'm going to show you one way to do it, and I'm also going to show you how to fix mistakes. So we're going to start by clicking this button up here. It's called the Assistant Editor button, and it's going to then change your interface into two different panes. So on the left hand side you have your document outline and storyboard, and on the right hand side you should be seeing viewcontroller.swift. If you're not, then what you want to do is make sure that up here it's switched to automatic, and you can choose viewcontroller.swift. But actually before that, you want to make sure you are clicking this view controller here so you have it highlighted, and then change this automatic. Go down here and choose view controller. You should be seeing this viewcontroller.swift on the right hand side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create some space here, so that, because we're going to be sort of dragging elements into this space. So hold down Control on your keyboard, and while you're still holding it down, click this label here in the document outline and click and drag it into this area here. You're still holding down Control on your keyboard, and then let go of your mouse while holding Control. You should see this little dialog pop up to ask you how you want to name your label. So I'm just going to call this the label. I'm going to connect it, and just like that, we now have an IB outlet property called label that is connected to this label here. Let's double check our work here. we can right click this label in the document outline, or if you only have a one button mouse, hold down Control and left click it, and you're going to see this little connections pop up. You should see your property name here connected to view controller. If you don't, then you might have connected the wrong element to this IB outlet. In that case, you're going to right click each of these elements one by one and open up this little menu and just see which one is connected to this label. And when you finally find it, you're going to want to click X to kind of break that connection. And you're going to want to delete this line of code here, and then you're going to want to try it again. So hold down Control, click and drag this label, drop it here, and then I'm going to name this label. Okay, and then if I right click the label in my document outline, I should see this connection here. We're going to do the same thing for the image view. Now you can either click and drag things from here, the actual storyboard, or you can do it from the document outline. But I find that sometimes things get overlapped, and a lot of the times that's how beginners accidentally connect the wrong element, because they think they're clicking the right element here in the storyboard and dragging the right element, but in fact it's the wrong one. But if you do it from the document outline here, it's less ambiguous, it's more clear as to what you're connecting. So we're going to connect the left element, the left image view element first. Hold down Control, click and drag here, let go. I'm going to call this the left image view. Let's connect that. And what also helps is if you create a little bit of open space right there. Let's connect this second one. Hold down Control, click and drag it here. This is the right image view. Now, there are two common beginner mistakes I want to highlight. The first one I already told you about is if you accidentally have connected the wrong element. What I like to do is after I connect each one, you can right click it and you can just double check that this is connected to the left image view property, and this one right here, right click, this is connected to the right image view property. And if it's not, then you connected the wrong element and you should do what I showed you earlier. Now other times, let me just break the connection for the right image view and delete this guy. Let me show you another common beginner mistake. So I'm connecting this right image view here, and I might accidentally make a typo. I might call it the right image or something like that. And oh no, I made a typo. So I go ahead and I delete that, and then I connect it again. This time, I name it properly the way I want it to. What beginners fail to realize is that now your right image view element is connected to two IB outlet properties, this correct one and also the typo one that you deleted. So you're going to want to right click that guy. You can see how here it's connected to two properties, right? Well, this right image one doesn't even exist anymore. So go ahead and click the X to break that off, and now it's only connected to the proper one. So those are two beginner mistakes that often occur and cause app crashes. So you're going to want to make sure that your elements are connected properly. Next thing we're going to connect is what's called an IB action. Now, IB action is kind of like an IB outlet, but the only difference is that an IB action lets you respond to events that are raised by elements in your storyboard here. So for instance, this button, when the user taps on it, it generates this event called the touch up inside. And if we want to connect some code to that event, we can do that by connecting that event on the button to an IB action function. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. We're going to want to drag things over on the right here, but instead of up here this time, we're going to want to do it as a function. So, a good place to do it would be right here above, maybe not up there. You could do it there, or you can do it here, as long as it's not inside another function. We're going to do it in here, which is basically, if you scroll all the way down, this is the last closing bracket. This closing bracket matches the opening bracket for your class up here. Okay, so right above that, that's where we want to add this IB action function. So go ahead, hold down Control on your keyboard, click and drag the button down here, and then release. Now you might say that this is what we did for adding an IB outlet, and you wouldn't be wrong. But the difference is that under connection here, you want to change that drop down to action. And you want to change the type here to UI button, and then the name, we can type in anything we want. I'm going to put button tapped and click connect. Now you can see that it is an IB action function here, and inside, in between this opening bracket and this closing bracket, we can put some code to execute. The code inside here is going to be called whenever the button is tapped on. Now let's double check our work. If we go back here and right click on this button, you can see that under the sent events section, touch up inside is connected to view controller button tapped. The same things apply. If you made a typo and you try and connect another IB action, just double check this menu here. It's probably a little harder to make a mistake with the IB action with the button, because I think that, I might be wrong, but I think that this event can only be connected to, let me just try that out right now. Okay, yeah, so it can be connected to two actions. In this case, when you tap on that button, I'm pretty sure both of them will fire, but you want to make sure that it's only connected to what we want, which is button tapped, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this other IB action function. Okay, so now we're ready to add some images to our storyboard, and the last thing we're going to do after that is then work on this button tapped function. So go ahead and click this button, which shows you the standard editor, and we can zoom back in by clicking this. So the images are going to be available in a link below the video, so you can download them and you can use them in the app to follow along. I've got it right here on my desktop. After you download it onto your desktop, you're going to double click it and unzip it. You're going to get a folder called images, and it's going to contain all the images that we're going to need for this application. So go ahead in the file navigator of Xcode, click on assets.xc assets, and this is what's called the asset library. We're going to be able to add images in here and name them, and then we're going to be able to refer to them. So what I want you to do is highlight all the images. You can press Command A in this folder to highlight everything, but I don't want you to drag in the icon folder. So hold down Command, click the icon folder so it's unselected or deselected, and then you can drag in the rest of these images into this column right here in the asset library. So you can see me dragging them in, and I'm going to put them right here. See, when I let go, what happens is that it groups, based on the image names, it groups these images together. So for Dice 1, you can see I have the 1x version, the 2x, and the 3x. And these are just different sizes of the same image asset for the different resolutions on different iPhone devices. If you look in the folder, you can see I have here dice1.png, dice1 at 2x.png, and dice1 at 3x.png. They're all the same asset, just different sizes. And when you drag them all into Xcode like that, it should be smart enough to combine them. And we have this and this. This is the felt for the table, and these are the dice. If it doesn't do this for you, what you can do, so for instance, if it just does that, maybe it separates or something. Maybe you get something like this where you have dice 1 and then these two aren't filled, and then you have dice 1-1 and only 2x is filled. What you can do is you can delete this one and only have dice 1, and then you can manually drag the 2x version into this slot and then drag the at 3x into this slot. Xcode should be smart enough to detect it for you though if you drag it together. Okay, so now we're done in the asset library here for now, and we're going to go into the storyboard and we're going to add the background. So for the background, we're going to want to add it behind this stack view. We're going to make a giant image view, anchor it to all 4 sides, and it's going to be behind the stack view. We don't want to place it into the stack view because then it would basically put our background below the button, which we don't want. Okay, so let's go down here. Make sure you're looking at the object library. Search for image view. And instead of dragging it into the view, I'm going to drag it directly into the document outline where I want it. So click this guy and drag it. Now make sure you don't accidentally replace the root view. You see here how my root view is highlighted in blue? If I let go now, it's actually going to replace my root view with the UI image view. And it's going to break everything. So I just did it. And what you can do in this instance is press Command Z or Z if you're Canadian like me, and undo. Okay, so you want to just be careful about that. So click and drag the image view. Make sure it's a blue line like this, okay? And you might accidentally put it inside the stack view like I just did here, but it's very easy to just click and just drag, move it right above the stack view there, like that. So in the end, you want something like this, where you have the image view right below the root view and the stack view on top of that image view. And the stack view obviously contains our label, the dice image views, and the button. Okay, so now I'm going to highlight this new image view that we just added. Let's add some constraints. I'm going to click this Add Constraints button, and we're going to remove the Constraint to Margins check mark, right? Because we want it edge to edge. Let's choose 0 for all 4 sides, but this time I'm going to click this drop down and I want it relative to the view, and that's going to change the number again. So I'm going to hit 0 again, and down here, this one, I want it relative to the view and not the bottom layout guide. So I'm going to choose the view there. It's going to change the number back to 270. Let's change it back to 0. This button should read Add 4 Constraints. If it doesn't read Add 4 Constraints, then you want to make sure all of these 4 red lines are enabled. You click that. You might have to click the Update Frames button. You might not. And you should have the image view. It's kind of in the background of the stack view. Right now, there is no image on it, so you can't really tell. But highlight that image view. Go over here in this inspector. And in this Attributes Inspector pane, change the image. The drop down should show you all of the images in your asset library, and choose Table. Now you can see the felt here. Some of the text is hard to read now, so click the label and let's change the color of it to white. And for this button, let's change some of the stuff as well. So for the image drop down, let's use roll, and let's change the word button here to roll. Okay, and that should be okay. You can set some of the images for these image views if you want. So for instance, click the left image view, change the image, I don't know, to 3. Click this guy, change it to 5 or something or 4. Okay, so now we're ready to go back into our viewcontroller.swift. Press Command S to save your project. Inside here in the button tapped, we're going to want to add some code. So first things first, let's just try modifying the label and the image views, because we did connect the label element and the 2 image views here as these properties. So let's go ahead and type in label, and that references the label that we added in the storyboard. It's got a property called text, so I write .text, and I can change this to any string I want. String is just a piece of text. So let's say I can say hello dice. And for instance, let's change some images. For the left image view, it's got a property, so I press dot, called image, and it accepts a type of UI image. Okay, so I'm going to have to create a new UI image object. So if these terms, properties, and objects and classes, if these terms are kind of fuzzy to you, you should either watch the Learn Swift for Beginners series, I'll link to that below, or the Start Here, the War app series, the basics, which I'll also link to below the video. So you should watch those first because it's going to get you started on the right foot with that terminology and with those basic concepts. So the UI image class has an initializer function called named, where I can pass in a string, and that string is going to be the image asset name. So if we go here, it's named dice1, dice2, dice3, dice4, dice5, dice6 with capital D. So let's try that out. Let's do dice6. And then down here, write image view dot image equals UI image named, and this autocomplete is really handy. It just tries to guess what you're typing, and you can then choose and just press enter and it'll complete it for you. Let's make this dice 1. Okay, so your syntax should look something like this, and if you're even missing one bracket or one quotation mark, or it's on a separate new line like this, it may not work correctly. So you have to make sure everything looks just the way I have it here. Let's go ahead and run our app. Up here, instead of the iPhone 7 Plus, I'm going to choose the iPhone 7 because I think the iPhone 7 Plus has a ton of extra space and our app isn't really designed for that. It'll still work, but you're going to have a lot of empty space. So I'm going to choose the iPhone 7 and I'm going to click this button to run the application. It's going to launch the iOS simulator here, which just kind of simulates a real device, and you're going to see your app on it. So here we've got our label, our dice here, and this roll button. And the reason that none of the text changed, and this is not 6 and this is not 1 like we've set it here, is because this code only executes when the button is tapped. Remember, this IB action only fires when the roll button is tapped. So when I tap it, you're going to see that label change and those images change. The only problem is that each time I click roll, it doesn't randomize, right? So that's kind of the problem here. What we need to do is simply create 2 random numbers. Now I'm going to create 2 variables here. We can probably even use constants instead. Var first number equals, we're going to use the arc for random function, and the upper bound is going to be 5, and because it starts randomizing from 0 to whatever the upper limit is, so if I put 6 here, it's going to randomize from 0 to 6. So I'm going to do 0 to 5 and I'm going to plus 1. So then I'm going to get the ranges from 1 to 6 instead. Okay, next I'm going to say let second number equals arc for random, and I'm going to do the same thing here. Plus 1. Okay, so now we have something to work with. For our label, I'm going to say sum, or the sum is colon, and somehow I want to add these 2 numbers together, right, and then put it here. We're going to use this little syntax here, have this backslash, and then 2 rounded brackets like this, and this lets you insert a variable into the string. So if I did something like this and put in first number, it would read the sum is colon and then whatever first number was. But inside here, I'm going to put first number plus second number, and then it's going to add these 2 guys up and insert them into the string here. Let's just test that out to see if that we get the proper thing. Okay, so I'm rolling. You can see the sum changing, right? I assume it's correct. Another thing we can do is we can actually print out these numbers into the console using this print statement. So we can say print first number, print second number, like that. Let's run it again. I press Command R on my keyboard to run it. You can press this button here up here in the Xcode interface also to run it. So when I click roll now, because I'm printing out the numbers, I can see if it matches. See, 4 plus 3 is 7. Let's click it again. I've got 2 and 4 now, and that is 6 indeed. Okay, so that's working. Get rid of these print statements here. Now we need to change the images. So as you can see, we've conveniently named the assets dice 1 all the way to dice 6. So all we need to do really is change this number here. Again, let's use that trick where we can insert a variable into a string. So let's get rid of 6 and do this backslash followed by 2 brackets like that. And let's insert first number into that string. Now you have to make sure that there is no space between this E and this slash, right? Because if you did that, then the resulting image name would be dice space and then whatever the number was. And that is not going to match up with these names we have here in the asset library. So you want to make sure that there's no space between the E and the forward slash or backslash, sorry. For this one, second image view, I'm going to get rid of the 1 and do the same thing, except I'm going to put in the second number here. Now I'm going to press Command R or click this button to run the application. And when we click roll, we get these different images and we get the sum up there. Now one thing I want to mention is that if you have any missing images, like if you click on roll and then you get kind of an empty space there and you don't have the corresponding dice image, I would double check in the asset library that you actually have the images and that they're named capital D dice with the number behind it. Because when you have an empty image, that means that whatever you're setting here, that name, it can't find that image. So either you have a typo here, you might have done like lowercase dice, right? In that case, you're not going to find any of the images in the asset library. Want to make sure that it's capital D dice. There's no space between the E and the slash there, and that you actually did, you did drag all of the images into the asset library here. Okay, and that should be it. So now you have this working app. Now, if you wanted to launch this on your phone, you can actually just plug in your phone to your computer right now, and then in this menu, you should see your device here. So I have my phone plugged in right now, but it looks like I haven't updated my OS. So if you have, you can select your phone like that and you can try running it on your phone. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that was fun. And I hope you learned a lot. I apologize to those people who have been through a lot of this if I went a little slow, but I feel like for beginners, this would be perfect. I made an extra effort to kind of explain where the pitfalls were as well. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial and you want to see more, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and also go on my website codewithchris.com and sign up for the newsletter, because there are times where I send out emails on tutorials that are written only and I don't have a video version, so you want to make sure that you get those as well. And finally, if you've completed this dice roll app, I want to know about it, because I'm trying to collect some more social proof. I'm trying to bring more awareness to Code with Chris. So I'm going to have a section at the end of this this dice roll app written tutorial where I'm going to feature people who have completed the app. So if you'd like your name featured in the section below this article where I'm going to show all the people who've completed the app, then simply just go to codewithchris.com, go to this page here. I'll probably put a link to this page in the description below the video, and scroll all the way to the bottom to the Wall of Fame, and you're going to be able to send out a tweet that basically says you've completed it, and then I'm going to immortalize you by saving your tweet and linking it to your Twitter profile in the Wall of Fame at the end of this blog article. So if you do that, I thank you, and I really appreciate it. Be sure to leave a comment and let me know what you think of this tutorial, and look forward to seeing more from me. Thanks for watching, thanks for learning with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.